This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 182. And on today's show, AEW making some noise, making some moves, and adding something, possibly a new show, possibly a new channel. Got the lowdown on that, as well as some releases coming from WWE. Of course, we're going to take a look at the biggest topics and trends in wrestling, but you know we had a pay-per-view. And by God, it was a pay-per-view. That's not a good thing. It's one of those ones that you'll remember forever because there were zombies. Yeah, freaking zombies. The zombie wrangler of them all. He's here doing it with me as always. He's the one. He's the only. He is the zombie MFer himself, the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
It was so frustrating because you knew they took the money to promote a movie, Dave Bautista's movie. It's fine. We saw the zombies on the screen, you know, in the Thunderdome. I get it. Look, it's about money for Vince, and the kids seem to like it, but no adult was going to like that. And especially, you got to give credit to The Miz and Damian Priest for making chicken salad out of chicken shit. They didn't deserve that. That's not anywhere near the caliber of what we want to see as grown men, seeing zombies as lumberjacks. You could have had the zombies. Just have them come out after the match or for 2 seconds or in the back or something weird, not as the lumberjacks. So it pissed me off to the highest degree, and it forced me to just like put it on in the background. But thankfully, in rewatching, it really hurt the rest. For those people that turned it off, it hurt the rest of the card because there was some great wrestling. So the pay-per-view was a solid B, but could have been in the A range had they not disrespected The Miz, disrespected Damian Priest to the degree that you have a paid commercial in a wrestling ring. That's like the line going way beyond what anybody that's a professional wrestling fan likes. And I get it. Sports entertainment. Vince will do anything to get people pissed off. He does not care. Money is fat, but it hurts your reputation when you have these great performers that on their own can get over. And you actually, if you're The Miz, and I know you're joking around about it, and you're getting that fat paycheck, but at some point, move back to being a professional wrestler, not being a sports entertainer. The guy can do it. He can do it all. He's in that category. And you got Damian Priest, who's on his way to being a 5-tool guy, a guy that can carry your company. And you do this to them? This is what you put on a piece of paper and have a producer tell them? It ruined the night for me. I had to shut it off at that point, and how I was doing it was I was excited for the Shawn Michaels documentary, so I had the sound on for the wrestling and 2 screens on the computer, and I just basically shut off the pay-per-view and watched the documentary in full force, peeked in a little bit to see the results, and then went back later. But it was disappointing, and in a series of disappointments, I mean, this one tops it. I think this is one of the worst nights in wrestling history.
Yeah, it was pretty unfortunate because, like you said, there were a couple really good matches, especially the back half of this pay-per-view. The Bianca Belair Bayley match was pretty good, a little bit sloppy at times, but overall it told a good story. The Bobby Lashley Drew McIntyre Braun Strowman match was all over the place, like not in a bad way, in actually a really, really good way. It was very physical, very hard hitting, and Roman Reigns and Cesaro tore the house down. They put on an absolute clinic, and all those matches had to follow the zombie apocalypse that was Damian Priest versus The Miz. What it ended up doing was it overshadowed what could have been a pretty decent pay-per-view. I don't think either one of us really cared too much for the Sheamus Ricochet kickoff match. I think we both thought the Rhea Ripley Asuka Charlotte Flair match was a little bit sloppy. Rhea Ripley ends up coming out the victor. I liked the Rey Mysterio and the Dominic Mysterio match where they end up defeating Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler. I thought they did a nice job. In our group message, you were messaging. You were like, why would you have Dominic get taken out before this all this kind of culminates in the match. And I think what WWE did was, this is how they package wrestlers when they want to give them a push. He has to overcome the insurmountable odds of getting thrown into some empty cases in the back. The doc says, "No, you can't go out there," and he's sitting on the bench, and the docs are telling him no. And Ray's like, "I got it, son. I'm gonna go take care of it." And then Ray's out there just getting his shit pushed in, and Dominic comes limping down to the ring. Ray makes the hot tag, or Dominic makes the hot tag, and then runs wild and gets the pin. And it's a way to build him up. It's all it is. They're trying to give the guy credibility. He's come into WWE really and truly without any experience whatsoever, no name. You know, you've got guys like Robert Roode, who has a history in Impact, and wrestling fans know. Cesaro is another guy who came from ROH, and fans know. Seth Rollins, somebody else. Like, they have a lineage. They've done something. All Dominic has is a namesake, just Mysterio. That's it. So this is a way to build him up, and it's a way to get him over. And I thought it was a fine match. I thought it was good. I think the second half of this pay-per-view absolutely carried it. I thought you ended up with one solid match at the first half, and I think you ended up with three solid matches that were highlighted by one awful decision in booking and creative to bring zombies into the mix. It was hard to get over it. And the backlash on the internet was absolutely amazing and fun to read through and watch. That was probably the highlight for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you had such good matches all around it, but you just really went into the whole notion, and I think the big debate is Vince took the cash to promote something in the ring, and you have a lot of fans that are still fans of pro wrestling, and when you take it to this whole sports entertainment, it just brings it down a notch, and it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is. Now, coming out of this, I end up getting the point. Damian Priest.
Wait, let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that for a second. How do you have The Miz lose this? I mean, where does The Miz really realistically? Okay, I get it. Damian Priest is the next big thing. This was the determining factor. Yes, I'm salty because I lost. But outside of all that, big picture, you have a commodity. You have The Miz. You can't have him lose WrestleMania and WrestleMania Backlash and then put him in with zombies. I mean, at least throw the man a bone. This is a legit superstar. To take the money to do this, it's just so unfortunate because you got to remember this is the guy that was just a few weeks ago removed from having the title, even though you made him look like a bitch because you only give it to him for 2 weeks. This is not how you develop a character like The Miz. This is how you destroy a character. How on earth can I, going forward, look at that man and see him in a suit and not just laugh at him? It's character suicide. I wouldn't have done it. I would have just said, screw this. I'm going home.
Well, if you hang around until news and notes, you'll find out maybe why they had to do what they had to do, and it might have been called in the ring. But you basically just set the example and laid it all out as to why you do this to The Miz, because you're trying to build up a guy like Damian Priest. This is all about building up a new character. So The Miz is established. He's not going anywhere. You're a fan of The Miz. You might look at him a little bit different because he's had a rough couple weeks, but this is how you build up a guy like Damian Priest. He gets a couple big wins over The Miz, gets a couple big wins over John Morrison, and basically he's supposed to be off and running now. You know, we talked about how The Miz has essentially been the linchpin for WWE since John Cena left. He's been the stalwart. He's been the guy, the go-to. You put Damian Priest in the ring with the go-to, and he gets some wins. That should give him a little bit of a boost here and should put him on the casual fans page. And that's why you do that. That's what happens there. So because of that, because I understand what WWE is trying to do and build up a guy like Damian Priest, I get the point, and I take the lead 4-3. Now let's move into some topics and trends. Now, I think the biggest thing coming out of Monday Night Raw was Kofi Kingston getting a massive win over Bobby Lashley. However, it came by way of roll-up, which I know is the one move that you absolutely hate and is cringeworthy for you. I want to know what your reaction was to Kofi Kingston rolling up Bobby Lashley for the big W.
I was like, Kofi with the roll up. And when you look at it too, though, cuz if you go back in history prior to the network going over to Peacock, there were some finishes that actually finished with roll ups back in the day on major cards. I'll look through it again, but it's just, oh my God, the shock. When a pro wrestler can't get up from a roll up, where do you go from that? But it was a good match. So let's just skirt around the fact that the world heavyweight champion got rolled up. Kofi Kingston is believable as a main event guy. The match was great. It was fun to see, and you continue to set up the next feuds going forward. And Kofi in the main event was fresh, and it was cool. I thought it was a good match. I thought it was really fun, and I was really impressed with that. And I love the way it's set up, too, with the open challenge and Drew coming out and them saying, no, it's not you. So MVP is just stellar. Now, I will say this, because you didn't put it on the sheet. I know times are tough. Budgets are tight, but if you're going to pay 5 actresses to escort the world heavyweight champion, please no disrespect, but you need 9s and 10s, not 3s and 4s, okay? And I was like, either Bobby's got bad taste or the company went to the, no, we can't afford the $10,000 for this slate of 5. We got to go with the $1,800 for these 5. And I was like, I get kind of maybe that you want to be all-inclusive, but you have one like that. And then the rest got to be models. They just got to be models. And that ensemble, I don't know how to politely say it, was not worthy of the world heavyweight champion to represent WWE. Unacceptable at the highest level. Anybody with the brain said, something is amiss here. The world champ, Bobby Lashley. Why does Bobby not get the 5-star treatment? It's the world champ, man. You gotta save on the zombie. You just got zombie money. Spend it. Did you think the same thing? Wasn't that your first reaction? Like, we got a problem here.
I was kind of like, I mean, look, I think cancel culture is a real thing, and I think a lot of times Vince has really walked that line, especially in the past with what is deemed the Attitude Era and a lot of the things that he does with WWE. He has walked that line. And I just don't think Vince was trying to ruffle any feathers with NBC or ruffle any feathers with Fox or having to come out and give an apology. So he was trying to be all-inclusive. And basically the ladies that walked Bobby Lashley down the ring were anywhere on a scale from 3 to about a 7.5. So anywhere from the girl next door to the Shrek monster down the street. That's what you got.
Yeah, it was. Oh my God! And then you said it yourself. The low light I felt was a match I got excited for, and I put in the group message. All right, I'm kicking out after Raw after the AJ Styles.
For this.
I was
really pumped for this.
AJ Styles now on the once every 3 week plan. Gets out there and what? Hey,
by the way, real quick, he looks like he's on the once every 3 week plan right now. He's looking a little portly, a little soft in the middle, if you don't mind me saying.
Absolutely.
While Elias looks like he's done all the steroids.
Yeah, what was that AJ Styles and Elias match? It wasn't smooth or crisp at all.
No, it was honestly, it was a huge low light of the show because you expect AJ Styles matches to be so damn good. And Elias is a guy who I feel like can get in the ring and can just about work with almost anybody. Like, I'm not expecting him to tear the house down, but at the same point, I'm not expecting him to be a bum either. And this match was letdown city. And I think the best point came from Kenny in our group message where he was like, so AJ's a face now? This was one of those weird heel matches. And in the end, Elias and Riker come out the bigger bad guys. Like, I don't know. This was one of those matches that totally confused me. Unless we're having an AJ Styles face turn sometime soon, I'm not sure what the hell that was. It was frustrating, to put it mildly.
Absolutely. Disappointing. You can't have that. Elias and AJ should have a better match for sure. Absolutely.
So SmackDown, we talked about the great match that Roman Reigns and Cesaro put on. And it kind of leaves us in this spot now where there's kind of this void for Roman Reigns. Who does Roman Reigns go against next? And I'll be honest with you. I really don't know who Roman Reigns takes on next, because Cesaro's going to get spun off into a match with Seth Rollins, who at the end of the pay-per-view came down and beat the living crap out of him after the match was over. So that's what's going to take place next. But for Roman Reigns, I'm not sure who you introduce him to or who you have him go up against. I mean, you've got some big name stars in Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman on Raw. We're going to get to The Miz. He's also on Raw. We're going to talk about him a little bit later on in the show. But I don't know what is left on SmackDown. Do you go Kevin Owens? Like, honestly, he might be the biggest name that's still left on SmackDown that has a shot at Roman Reigns. I don't know who you pair him up with next and who you feel is a legit contender to take this guy on for his championship, because they did a really nice job in a really quick time to make Cesaro feel like he was a stud and he was a number one contender. And they put on a hell of a show. They put on a great match. But Seth Rollins and Cesaro obviously isn't done. So Roman Reigns is lined up to face whom? Who's out there?
Exactly. Who does he make? What's next for the big dog? You continue to see now. Look, I felt that the championship opportunity that Cesaro had would have been great. It would have made news had you gave him the title. To rehash it with Seth Rollins kind of was a letdown after such a great match. I thought, I know we briefly just touched on it with the results, but Cesaro was believable. It was a good match. It was an amazing opportunity for him. Hopefully we get to see it again. But who should be next? I mean, you've gone through everybody. You've had opportunities now to see, do you dive into now Jay and Jimmy and what they're all about? Who's next? Who's going to step up? Do you do a tournament? I think this is kind of the time where you do maybe a King of the Ring style situation where have a tournament to determine the number one contender, a King of the Ring night that also gets an opportunity. But at this point in time, it's just Roman Reigns and everybody else. And I can't even name anybody that at this point in time I would want to see in the ring at this time with Roman Reigns.
Yeah, I think maybe going something like a King of the Ring might be a good idea. It'll allow other guys to kind of shine and maybe build up their value, and then they could take on Roman Reigns in a match. But it is frustrating. It really and truly is frustrating to see what happens, because I don't want to see Seth Rollins and Cesaro again. I just don't. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they spin this and what they end up doing with it. Now, NXT, I thought we got a fantastic main event on Tuesday. You had Bronson Reed take on Johnny Gargano in a cage match. And Bronson Reed's a guy who I think has had some pretty good matches in NXT. I don't think he's had anything where we're going to call each other or we're going to be in a group message like, oh my God, look at the big man. While Johnny Gargano has a huge lineage of fantastic matches in NXT, he, at this point, I feel like is a cornerstone of the yellow and black brand. But what we ended up getting on Tuesday night in the main event, I thought was absolutely stellar. There was a point in this match where out loud I said, man, this is really freaking good. And I looked at my watch, not to see when it was going to end, but to see how much time we had left of it, because I didn't want it to stop. And that's very rare that I do that. Normally, when WWE is giving me something, I will look at my watch to see how much longer I have to bear it. This was one of those matches where I looked at my watch and I just did not want it to stop. I wanted time to slow down because I thought it was such a good match. And I thought it told a really good story where you had Bronson Reed kind of overcoming all the odds, going up against Johnny Gargano. You even had a little bit of outside interference that was taking place, and Bronson Reed was able to deliver massive power moves off of the top ropes and was able to pin Johnny Gargano to become the new North American champion. I want to know what your take on the main event between Bronson Reed and Johnny Gargano was, because I was blown away.
Johnny Gargano, man, just a guy that you want more for. The guy can do it all. Very, very talented. I think is benefiting from working with Shawn Michaels. Always good to see a title change, man. NXT, they keep rolling along, and you're seeing great feuds develop. And Johnny Gargano is just a guy that's reliable and a guy that probably deserves a main roster push. But nowadays, with everybody that's going up and struggling, man, Johnny Gargano just has good matches, good feuds, professional. and a character that really has, I just truly believe, is a guy that you could highlight for many more years to come in NXT. And we have to talk about it. The move to Tuesday night has done them wonders. New eyeballs, many more people, and that's the best thing. This whole Wednesday night mini war, skirmish, spit fight that they had really didn't amount to much. NXT should have never did that. They should have looked to look how many feuds got washed away because you had it on a Wednesday opposing AEW. Killian Cross, the evolution of him, so the move to Tuesday, flawless. It's a great time. You still ride the momentum, and you can take a break too because Raw is so bad. You can just start your week on Tuesday and let it rip from there with NXT. And for many people, I think that's what they're doing. You're starting to see nice, steady ratings climbs for NXT while Raw has been stagnant.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Their move to Tuesday has been absolutely fantastic for the product and what it's given them. And I think because of it, it does a nice job for AEW as it allows both of these companies and both of these programs to kind of excel and touch basically everybody's home base here, right? So like if you're a fan of NXT, you can watch NXT. If you're a fan of AEW, you can watch AEW. If you're a fan of both, like both of us, we get to enjoy both of them in their entirety. You don't have to pick one and then have to fast forward through the other. You can watch them all just kind of play out, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And speaking of AEW, I thought we got another fantastic show as we build to Double or Nothing. Something coming out of this that I haven't realized until this week, and I'm not sure where you're at with it all. Eddie Kingston being paired with Jon Moxley. Eddie Kingston was already magic on a microphone. But him being paired with Jon Moxley, there is this new confidence. There is this new bravado. There is something that almost feels like it has opened up with Eddie Kingston. And Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley are quickly becoming one of my, if not my favorite thing on AEW television. I thought the promo that they cut this week was, one, hilarious. Two, I thought it helped get the match over. And three, it was one of those things where I could watch it for hours and not get sick of it because these two guys, you could tell that they are actually friends outside of the ring and outside of the business. These are two guys who can just feed off of each other, and they work really, really well together. And they're slowly becoming, if not my favorite, absolute favorite thing on AEW. I was wondering if you enjoyed the promo as much as me.
Dude, they're great. They're boys, and that's what the best thing is that the best characters, the best groups are those that are just themselves amped up. Eddie Kingston has really shined. I think that getting the opportunity to work alongside Jon Moxley can only help him to get more eyes on him and to have the opportunity that he has to cut promos and to do what he needs to do. I think the more that you highlight a character like Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley, the better off you're going to be. Now, with AEW, though, the problem is you're starting to see the injuries pile up just a little bit too high. Ricky Starks, man, unfortunately, going to be out 3 to 4 months with a fractured neck. Talented young wrestler. AEW's got to kind of start the process of going, man, we're only like a year and a half, 2 years into this, and we're starting to see, I know that you're paying some money to have Jon Moxley come out to Wild Thing for spots against New Japan wrestlers, but you might want to invest some more time and energy into teaching these guys how to wrestle safely. I don't need to see Spot Fest wrestling all weekend and then all on your shows, especially because the song then you're going to start to have to buy is Let the Bodies Hit the Floor, because Jericho's dealing with something. Ricky Starks got a severe injury. You're having these guys now with the weird, and you're only wrestling once a week. To have that level of severity with injuries, you ask yourself, is there a problem with getting over? Do they feel like they don't have any personality that they got to do? Someone's got to say, look, listen to the likes of you guys. I mean, they're not hearing this spot list from Jake the Snake Roberts. They're not hearing this spot list from Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Cody Rhodes. Where is it where you go, oh, I'm going to do a Canadian Destroyer and then no sell it? It doesn't work like that. Slow down, take your time, get over. You're not going to sustain a career by doing Huracan Rana followed by an over-the-top rope 360, then followed by a Canadian Destroyer, then following it up with a splash off the top. That's not how wrestling should work. You should value the importance of a high spot. It shouldn't go high spot, no sell, high spot. It should be intermediate move, headlock, a little bit of work in the ring, a little bit of false finishes, a little bit of taunting the crowd. They got to slow down because AEW's on a bad path here with their product, and especially now that there's a site that highlights the botches. That's not good.
Yeah, the botches do need to get cleaned up. I think it's one of those things where you do have to remember, too, they are basically doing a show in an open-air arena that is in Florida. The humidity is nasty. Sometimes the weather is not great. The ring gets slick. The ring gets wet. Those ropes get wet. And once they get wet, you don't have a ton of traction on the bottom of your wrestling boots. So you do tend to slip. And sometimes those things happen. Now, you're right. You're talking about the injury to Ricky Starks. That was just an unfortunate thing where him and Hangman Page had a move that just kind of went a little bit sideways. But you're right. Things do definitely need to get cleaned up. I do have a question for you. And it's weird to me the way that these guys are being used, but I absolutely love it. We talked about Hangman Page a few minutes ago, and I think in the end, Hangman Page will probably become the de facto leader of this group. But the Dark Order almost seems aimless at this point. They don't really have one leader. They are a group that went from being kind of a gray group, nobody really knew what they were, or what the hell they were doing, to being bad guys, to now they are straight up faces, but they don't really do a whole lot. Like they'll come out and they'll chase some guys away. They'll back a couple people up. They're like all the good guys backup, which I think is great. I think it's fantastic. And they're top of mind without ever really having to step in the ring. And I think that's interesting. The way that AEW has been able to utilize them, been able to use them in such a way where they don't have to be in the ring, but they're going to be on the program and you're going to see them. And they're always just kind of there. For me, I think the way this ends, Hangman Page, it just ends up taking over the entire group, becomes the de facto leader, takes over for Brody Lee. And I don't know if that's something he wants. I don't know if that's something he's really willing to do. And maybe there's some apprehension there. But I think in the end, that's kind of how it plays out. I was wondering if you kind of see it the same way or if you're just kind of frustrated by it, because these guys aren't getting a ton of in-ring work, but they are on the show constantly. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's just, what do you think the best option is for them? Like, where do they need to go after kind of a halt in their momentum?
I think what has to happen, right, with this group is you've got so many different personalities and you've got so many guys who are so talented at so many different things. You need to kind of have like your tag team guys in that group. You need to have your singles competitors. Like 10 could be a singles competitor. You could have a couple of the other guys wrestle in tag teams. And I think you need to kind of find who works well where and then suit them there. And this is something that we talked about a long time ago when Brody Lee was at the head of it all. And it was kind of taking over all of AEW. So your champion is part of the Dark Order. Your tag team champion is part of the Dark Order. Your TNT champion is part of the Dark Order. Your women are women's champions of they're the part of the Dark Order. I think that's kind of the direction you need to go in, and I think that's something that you need to kind of build to. But before you do that, you got to kind of get somebody as the head of the horse here. And again, I think that'll probably be the Hangman Adam Page. I think that's kind of how it's going to work out. What do you think about that?
I like it. Set it all up. I think that what happens next with Hangman is going to be definitely intriguing. I'm also curious with Pac, the stuff going on with the Pinnacle, everything going out the Inner Circle, Chris Jericho. I'm definitely liking what's going on at the top. You still got to build up some of the mid card. The women are doing okay, but yeah, you got to clean up the wrestling and get some really excitement. The one guy that I guess kind of halted a little bit, Cody Rhodes. Not feeling exactly what he's doing lately, but he's got to get back up there to the top. And I know that he doesn't want to put himself in the big picture type stuff, but you got to get in there with some, you got to get a good feud going because it's kind of, momentum has slowly halted at this point for Cody Rhodes. Now, I see here too, absolutely, I'm much more behind Brian Pillman Jr. now that you've seen the dark side of the ring with Brian Pillman. Man, that was
dude.
Good.
It was so good.
So
it was
good.
So damn.
It's a good series on Vice, and basically, if you don't know, it's a series that takes a look at some of the seedier side of wrestling, some of the stories that maybe are not as highlighted as often, that detail addiction, issues, things like that. And man, there's no way that Brian Pillman's mistress doesn't come away looking a little bit rough in regards to the actions that she took. And
yeah, she was not portrayed well.
No, it's unfortunate. And man, the man just couldn't be faithful. And it was really tough to see that, especially for the daughter too, to lose both her parents by the time she's less than 8 years old was really gut-wrenching and things like that. But, for Brian Pillman Jr. to carry the name on, I think that you just have to root for him. And my first thought was, man, I can't wait for him to get a push because it's going to be believable. And you look at the legacy, you're just starting to see history repeat itself, and I'm very impressed. I'm liking what I'm seeing right now with Brian Pillman Jr. We talked about it before when he first came up a year or two ago in the Indies. Like, okay, that's a name. It's going to be tough to live up to the hype, but it's an amazing opportunity for Brian Pillman Jr. And the Dark Side of the Ring has some great stories. Some stories too about the King of the Death match last week was really, really solid as well. So I love the opportunity to check out the Dark Side of the Ring. And you and I are sports fans. Dark Side of Football is also interesting as well with Chad Johnson. I caught bits and pieces of that as well to see some inside
that was
story.
really good, actually.
Yeah, the Dark Side series needs to continue, and you can tell that story from a lot of different sports in a lot of different ways. So it was just all around a good time in the world of professional wrestling. All right, cuz, before we get out of here, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
All right, so some big news regarding AEW and AAA. AAA Lucha Libre Worldwide officially announced Tuesday that Kenny Omega will defend the AAA Mega Championship against Andrade at Triple Mania on August 14th. Earlier this month, Andrade appeared at AAA's Rey de Reyes show on the big screen and challenged Omega to a title match at Triple Mania, which is AAA's biggest event of the year. Now, we talked about Miz quite a bit at the beginning of the show. Now, the Miz, I think this is where the DSP jinx comes into play, because we just talked about the Miz and how he was the absolute linchpin for WWE since Cena left. And the Miz reportedly suffered his first major injury of his career Sunday during that lumberjack match against Damian Priest at WrestleMania Backlash, which I think is a stupid name. But on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer reported that the Miz suffered a torn ACL on a spot that saw the Priest land on him. Priest jumped off the top rope and landed on the Miz's leg. The Miz then sold the leg for some time. Meltzer noted that the severity of the tear isn't yet known. WWE is hopeful that it's only a partial tear. If the tear is full, the Miz could be out anywhere from 6 months to a year. So kind of brutal news for Miz fans. Also sounds like Raw will be getting a new set soon. Now, a date hasn't been released, but expect it in the next month or so. And on Wednesday, WWE got back to handing out pink slips, this time to NXT talent. This list includes Drake Wirtz, Jake Clemens, Alexander Wolf, who, if you watched NXT, he ended up getting beat up and dismantled by Imperium, Skylar Story, Ezra Judge, Jessamine Duke, which is weird to me, Vanessa Bourne, Kavita DeVille, and they just released Velveteen Dream. He also got his pink slip. Velveteen Dreams had a little bit of some issues in the back with some WWE officials, so I guess not a surprise, but maybe a surprise because he's a big name. Now, for AEW, lots of movement for AEW. This is good. This is some good stuff for AEW that's going on. All Elite Wrestling announced the creation of a new television show and the eventual movement of AEW Dynamite from TNT to TBS on Wednesdays. So according to Scott Fishman of the Miami Herald, AEW said in a press release that a new show called AEW Rampage will debut on TNT on August 13th at 10 p.m. Now, the hour-long show will join Dynamite as AEW's second weekly television show. AEW also revealed that Dynamite, which airs weekly on Wednesday nights on TNT, since its inception in 2019, will be moved to TBS beginning in January of 2022. Additionally, AEW will air 4 new professional wrestling specials annually on TNT. Now, there was some talk about adding an extra hour to Dynamite, and thank God Tony Khan has a brain and said, no, we're not doing that. They ended up creating another show, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So wrestling fans, you want more wrestling, you're about to get more wrestling. AEW is now branching off and giving you 3 hours of wrestling over 2 nights, which I think is the right move. I think it's fantastic. I think TBS is an interesting move. I do like them on TNT. I think they get away with a ton as far as what they say and how they say it and the swearing. But for the Turner brands, TBS is the big money brand. So it shows you what basically Turner Broadcast, if that's what it's still called, or AOL or whatever it's called now, believes in AEW. I think TNT was kind of the trial run, and TBS is where the money is at. So that's good news if you're an AEW fan. And that's it for this week's wrestling news and notes, my brother.
Cause not too many things in your news shocks me. I did not hear anywhere, no whispers of the Miz injury. I'm sitting here laid out, bummed out, gutted. I can't believe it. The man that just had the documentary where he talks about being consistent, being the guy, could be out 9 months if it's a severe tear. You have now Jinder Mahal, Sheamus, Ali. You have also Drip that could get the opportunity to see if he picks up the ball, but I'm gutted, man. This sucks. It could be the best thing that ever happens to him. Takes a year off, really reflects, bulks up a little bit. After, the injury, you still can come back and have a great career, a great 3-4 year run. But I hope that he comes back and is like, no more gimmick shit. I'm here to be bulked up and to be the guy. This is it. This could be the beginning of the end for The Miz, or it could be a nice 5-6 year run where he comes back. But man, I hope it's a partial tear, a couple months off, and he comes back. But a full tear, and it could be a very, very bad 2021 for The Miz. You gutted me, cuz I never even heard it. I can't believe it. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter for great wrestling knowledge and other great Detroit sports takes at Adam R. STROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure you pay attention weekly to the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast, where we talk about all things in the world of professional wrestling, talk about the news and things like that, and we'll talk further in coming episodes regarding how the absence of The Miz is going to crush Raw, and a couple guys got to take advantage. They got to step up. But for The Miz, get well soon, brother. You put in the work. You deserve the time off. And you get to hang out with Maurice. So win-win, bada bing. I mean, you could have had her come out there with Bobby Lashley and maybe make a new angle for down the road in a year. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John McEnroe. You just downloaded the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. Let's talk again next week.